Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another episode of Creatives Chat, featuring Brittany Allyson. Episode 41.
Cool.
Join us as we chat about who knows what. Our show shall begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by wearehistorically.com, Conscious Human Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Hello and welcome to Creatives Chat. I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And Peter's going to tell us who we have lined up on our show.
Ooh, Rusty, we have a Houston-raised, Seattle-based singer, songwriter, actress, theater maker, and self-proclaimed woo-woo woman. We have Brittany Allyson joining us today, who's really going to shine her light and raise the frequency to empower others in all of her work in this conversation.
Well, everybody, meet the Autotelic herself, Brittany Allyson.
Oh, Brittany, I'm so excited to have you on Creatives Chat. How you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored here.
Well, and for the listeners, I got introduced into Brittany Allyson's music from the Chip In World Hunger Fight for Hunger concert, and I was really floored. It was the perfect act to start the show because I could just tap into that real recognizes real vibe, and you're just tapped into the flow. It's amazing to hear. It's really cool.
Why didn't I meet this? Why didn't I meet this? Opportunity to experience bliss.
So, in terms of your self-proclamation of woo-woo woman, where did that kind of intuitional spiritual journey start at?
Oh, where did it start? Okay.
Loaded question.
Let's take it back. I do feel like the woo-woo woman part of me started when I was a little girl. And, you know, I remember being attracted to the bohemian lifestyle. I remember having dreams of wanting to own a truck that had a canopy over the bed. And then I wanted to, put a mattress in there and like a cooler. And I wanted to just travel. And I would dream of this when I was a little girl. And I remember telling my dad and my stepmom at the time, and they said stuff like, well, that means a whole nother thing if you want to like have a bed in the back of your car. But no, I just knew that was the nomadic, free-flowing life. And I grew up in a family that, there was no reason for me to truly trust the flow energy or any sort of Buddhist ideas or Taoist ideas, anything that's of the spiritual realm, when we're not talking about a secular religion. And I just knew that if it was real, it was just going to come to me. The answers, the mentors, the reason for believing in it and leaning more into it was just going to just flow into my life. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up several times finding mentors, or they would find me. It's when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Very much what several times, and it's led me down the path of learning, taking on tarot, and being a tarot reader, and astrology is something I really it roots me. It's a foundation of who I am. And flow and creative recovery, all of it it's just a natural unfolding of what my preference has led me toward. And so it started when I was very young, and the term woo-woo woman is something that it's like woo-woo grabs back, like reclaim your woo-woo. so many people, I feel like, are detached from the idea that we are spirit having a human experience. And everything in my life, all of the unfolding, all of the people, the miraculous saving graces and things that have just developed me into the woman I am, have a lot to do with the fact that I trust that everything is happening for me, not to me. And I trust that, you know, that it's all going to, but it's required that I lean into my trust of that, and my knowing that, my belief of that. So woo woo, being a woo woman is reclaiming woo woo, you know,
Right.
like rating. It's, yes, I'm self-aware. I know how crazy this sounds, but look at the authentic smile on my face. It is a journey. It has been a journey to this. So
I love it. No, and that's something that's so beautiful, is when you can really recognize someone who's gone through that process of healing and unfoldment and empowerment. It really does not only catch the ear and the eye, it catches the heart. And I think that's one of the greatest things about your music, is that it's so real and rooted in the truth. And again, you can have all the different types of chords and progressions and everything that goes along with the music and the notes and how it's all arranged, but it's your words that really echo through. And I think that was really profound for me, especially when it was it was week 37 of your Saturday song assignment, and it was if we wanted to. Oh, I've done my research. I've looked through the weeks, and it's a crazy year to see the progression of just that. But If We Wanted To was amazing, that acoustic cover, and then to hear it again in the Chip In concert, I was like, yeah, there we go. But to me, that was one of those ones I was like, that's someone who's actually recognized the real importance of relationship and the fire aspect of love, and that it's, you know, it's that something that we have to tend to like a flame. And I don't know, I'm just so curious, when did you make the transition of implying this ability to really harness your creative powers as the goddess you are and transform it into art?
well, first of all, thank you so much for the time to listen to my music and to say things like that, like goddess. That really is flattering. When did I start to reclaim it? It's been a journey of, there have been several times in my life where I've had to reclaim this part of myself. And that's been my experience, is that it's a constant, we're always circling back, is what I believe, is that we're always circling back to remembering, forgetting and remembering. And when you remember, that's when you're like, oh, right, I am empowered. All right, I do have what it takes. All right, I am made of magic. All right, there is such a thing as manifestation. There is such a thing as law of attraction. There is, and all of the notes that empower you to maintain your frequency and to trust that everything is energy. That has been a constant reclaiming, but you know, you evolve through the lessons of when you lose track of that. So it's just become clearer and clearer that I have to prioritize that in my life. And I would say that when it happened in particular, when I moved to Seattle, which was only about 5 years ago, when I moved to Seattle, I kind of look at this as like a chapter in my life right now. I went through 3 years of this time. I was in a really toxic relationship, and that was a moment where I forgot, right? I really lost track of my light. I lost track of my my woo-woo-ness. You know, it was always there. It's the undercurrent of who I am, but you know, the toxic behavior and the abuse and neglect took the focus, right? And it was one of those relationships where you try to end it several times and then you keep getting hooked back into it. And my heart goes out to anyone during quarantine who's in that kind of dynamic right now. But ending that and officially and coming to terms with, I've lost this sense of myself. I've lost the fire inside of me through the codependent tendencies that I have, right? Or that I offer dynamic. Reclaiming my fire, that has been a big moment for me. And that's more recent than you may think, but yeah.
Well, it's cool because for me, I hear these types of, profound teachings of loving thyself through bringing it back to the Saturday Song assignment. So we're definitely gonna have to tap into that. But it was the ball's in your court now. What is that, like a week 49? So for everyone, check out our IG, check out this amazing playlist. It's essentially like a year's worth of an album just right there, just unfolding. It's so cool. But that was one for me that like really resonated with me when you finally have that understanding that it's like, listen, I've done the work, I've done the healing, you're up. And just being able to have that understanding of self-love and self-appreciation to leave a toxic environment it takes so much courage. And I think that's one of the cool things that echoes through your words is it's that self-mastery. That's why I say like real recognizes real, is because like through the lyrics of your songs, no matter what it is, you can always tell that this is coming from a place of knowing. It's not just some, oh, let me try to write this line, oh, this will sound nice. It's that deep, profound, like, ooh, these words carry weight. Oh, I felt that in the heart. Oh my gosh. And they evoke emotion. So I think that's one of the things that really caught my ears. And why I want to highlight you as our artist is because you're an amazing musician. Like you do so many different things, like from painting to dancing, fashion design, photography, videography, and just obviously like writing. Like, where do you have time to do it all? That's nuts.
Well, I mean, I think if this is your calling, right? If and I do believe we're all creative. That is something that's a deep belief within me.
Facts.
Yeah, I do. Hey, this show. What?
Exactly.
But I need to create. I feel like a vessel, something's working through me, and if I restrict myself from not being creative, then that's another way that I've experienced in the past my light dimming, right? And ultimately, I will say that toxic relationship was one of the biggest lessons in my life of you can literally, you have to love yourself enough to walk away from something that's going to dim it. So in all love, right, in any kind of relationship, learning those boundaries, learning how to exercise those boundaries and not jeopardize your inner peace, that is so important to me. And part of that for me, part of cultivating my inner peace is just being creative. So whether it's excuse me, whether it's through singing and songwriting, which has been I would say that that's a foundational medium of creativity that I've had since I was going back to that little girl, like 8. It's almost like that's been a part of the empowerment too, is realizing that these songs are not just helping me cope, but when I release them as the gift that is to be shared, right, they can help others if they resonate. And it does take courage to get over that hurdle, because so much goes on in your mind as an artist of, is this egoic to share my light, to share what's helping me? Who am I to say what this is for someone else? But then you zoom back and you think about being a consumer of music and consumer of art, and you realize that, well, it doesn't hurt to help add to the library of all of the things that are in the world. There's a message here that hopefully can resonate with the right person at the right time.
And they'll come into it when they need to and when they're ready. And that's the beauty of it, And I really love the fact of, the vessel, and you feel that love and creation, that flow traveling through you and expressing itself. Because I very much so align with that. I see this material world and this physical world as but a glimpse, a little quick spurts of light in the real totality of things, and it's just a gracious gift no matter what we receive. And it very much aligns with that. It's for me, not to me. And I find that's like kind of the spiritual paradox, is you always have to walk that fine line of like, is this egoic? Am I kind of using this and abusing this, or is this coming from love? And I think that's just the one thing that resonates through your music and all your creative projects, just doing some digging and research into them, is that it's really it's about giving these gifts and tools of wisdom that you've gained through your life and empowering the audience. And that's what really catches my eye with like musicians that are tapped in, artists that are tapped in, creatives that are always just like, oh yeah, I've done the healing. I know, you can tell. Well, you're gonna have to help me say it, because I love the animation. So it's her here, or is it here was the piece with the asterisks?
Yeah. It depends on how you read it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's up for interpretation. It's I tend to just call it the here project, so it includes all of the letters, but it could be the project. The whole idea being that in here is both he and her, but he can take up a lot of space if they want, and also they can be in here too. And so it's that was a project of, along my journey away from New York, I told myself, you know what, I can't put the pressure on myself anymore to be the actress that I should be, that everybody that I think I should be, and all of that should. Okay, should be eliminated from everyone's vocabulary. There is no
Seriously.
should.
No should, could, would, should have, should not. You do or you don't.
Yeah, that leads you nowhere. It makes you beat yourself up for not, for feeling guilty and having shame, when you could be focused on what else. What do you want?
It's like when you manifest things like that, you just put yourself out there, and then it's just like, here you go. Life just presents you with these gifts.
Yes. I say when you start saying yes to things, the universe is responding to that. Once you say it, that's my desire, stuff's starting to get filled in, and it's come toward you. It's just, you can't predict when and how it's going to show up. I think that has to do a lot with what's going on inside, right? And how much you trust yourself. And
so we fast forward a few years of settling those roots and digging deep. What have you felt is the biggest kind of takeaway from these past few years in Seattle and your healing journey and this just unfoldment to the artists we see today?
Really trusting how I show up is a big thing for me. I trusting that I do the work internally to try and be my most authentic version. And thank you. Yeah,
I love it. Thanks.
I try to do that. I do that work. It's not that I try, I literally do it. I journal. I have all of these different healing modalities that root me in who I am. And then what's so funny is that you go out into the world, and for me, I get triggered in like social anxiety, right? And I dim myself because I'm feeling just awkward, or that maybe I'm shining too bright, maybe that's too much, or maybe that person needs the space. Like, who do I hold space for? And sometimes you get kind of wrapped up in it all. And the biggest thing I've learned on the creative journey to answer that question is to trust that as I show up authentically, who's showing up in my circle of attention is also going to show up authentically. And if they don't, then it's my job to say, I have boundaries, and I can use my system that's telling me vibrationally that person is not a good frequency for me right now, and trying my best to put those boundaries in place so that way I can protect my authenticity and not jeopardize it to the tossing of like, how do I accommodate everybody else?
Yeah, yeah, because then you
And
just get back in that game of assumption and expectation, and then it creates that mental whirlwind inside, and you're like, oh gosh, no, and then you start to combine and close. But yeah, it's
yes,
interesting.
yes. Yeah, that was definitely a big part of me transitioning from the theater world to the music world, and like in the jamming world and the jazz world, right? With
Mm.
beautifully skilled musicians. Seattle is full, such a thriving music scene. Um, but the social tendencies are very different in the theater world versus the music world, and that has been um, a big transition,
I'm
of
so
being
curious.
comfortable with.
How?
Yeah,
Like that just got me. I'm just like, wait, what's the difference in the musicians and the theater folk? Like, this is something that I feel like is a
well,
learning experience for me right now. I'm just like,
I mean, they're all artists, right? So that's at the
yeah.
core, is like this beautiful, authentic, vulnerable being. And just I feel like the expectations kind of create this weird social dynamic. So in the theater
Mm.
world, especially as actors and directors, like pretty much everyone within that world is very much, here I am, like vulnerable, shining, shine, shine, shine. Like, we're best friends, let's hug. Like, everyone is just trying to open up. And if it's not authentic, then they're doing the game of, I have to do this in order to be liked, right? So it's
Mm.
just like, I would say the culture of it is very like showy, right? And very in your face, very direct. And and that's why, like, you can go to like a theater party and it's a theater party because everybody's just like super animated and they're showing all of it. And you know and then you still have people in the corner who are like too cool, but that's part of them showing that, what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
just it's a lovely bunch of people, right? Truly. And they're wearing their heart on their sleeves as much as they can. So
Mm.
you get used to that. Get used to that dynamic. And then you switch into the music world, which is a very different dynamic.
Yeah.
Also, it has to do with the project you're working on. Because in theater, right, like you work on a project for a number of weeks or maybe some months. And so you develop a small family. And it's sort of like you get addicted to that like feeling of connectedness, a
Mm.
deep empathy for one another in short
Yeah.
periods of time. So that, I feel like that contributes to that dynamic. And then you go into the music world where people are coming and going very quickly. They're working on projects by just sitting in on this one show and then not sitting in on that group anymore. Maybe they're in like 7 different bands. Maybe they're working on a
Mm.
solo project. There's so much more variety of that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of independence, I would say. And because of that, you can go to jams and things. And it took me a while to realize that people aren't showing up like this. People aren't showing up with like something to prove or something to do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's And then the music, like musicians are more the whole like stereotype of a cool jazz musician, like being like wearing all black with a beret, being in the back, like judging. That kind of the a little bit of the energy, I would say, because
Yeah.
there is a cool factor. You don't want to be too showy because then it comes off like you're like, what do you have to prove? Why do you need to be the center of this room right now?
Ooh.
Prove it to us when on stage, because what you're doing by coming into this space and being like super loud and shiny is now we have higher expectations for you when you get on, like when you get. So it's that confidence that's loved in theater is also loved in music, but it needs to be authentic confidence that's backed by talent that we see within a matter of minutes. And
Yeah.
so I think that there's more a recluse energy to musicians because you know, that's just part of the nature of the world. And this is just my observation, right? Like, I don't mean to offend anything. It's just, that's been my observation. And so it's interesting to flow into both worlds. And I feel into the music world because I am a little bit more introverted and slower to warm up to people, I would say, unless I'm feeling like it's my space to take up, right? And when you're on stage, it feels like your space. When you're being asked to be interviewed, it feels like your space, right? But otherwise, I'd rather observe, see how the dynamic is playing out before I just, jump in and try to,
Oh yeah, no, those are traits of, like, I find the kind of the tactician observer, the silent witness. Those are the ones that I'm always keen to, like, tap in with. Like, so it makes sense because I'm just like, oh, you see things differently, and it's that objective approach. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've heard in a long time of, trusting how you show up is really the ultimate form of energy protection, how I see it. Is because it allows you to just really shine your light, and you don't have to get impacted by anyone else's impressions or projections. And that's really fascinating for me, is that to be energy sensitive, to go into those different environments and to feel that different contraction, relaxation of form and ego and all the manifestations of things, that sounds pretty intense. Like, but a fun time, I will say that.
Yeah, it is intense. When you are a highly sensitive person, which it sounds like you are, and I feel like you are, and I mean, I have looked that I am, right? It is intense, and especially when you think about how you're doing it, right? Like, you're going out if you're like really hitting it, right? Like 3 times a week to different jams and some open mics, and each one has a different dynamic. Each one's led by a different person. So leadership really does change the room, like the texture of the room. Who's in changes that. So you're constantly adapting to like different types of energy. And to be honest, jamming and jazz has been a beautiful meditation in a way to help practice dancing with energy, because
keep it going. No, that's just I love the words. It's like, because I feel it when the moment you say like you're dancing with the energy, like that is the, I don't know, the purest expression of music for me, is that it just flows through you, and it gets you moving, and you have to, and especially when you're improvising with other musicians, it's just like it's a dance of everyone's unique light mixing and blending together. So you got to ride the wave carefully.
Yeah, because everybody's taking up space that they need to be heard, but they're also, if they're good, they're really fantastic listeners. That's what I think I picked up on, is if you are listening for, oh, that person wants to take up more space. Okay, let me hold back so that person can solo and that person can really flow. And then they will pull back because they'll feel the energy shifting, and we become this thing together for this moment in time that will never be recreated. Not exactly, that is the flow. It's like surfing a wave, and it's so important that all of the people that are there are of this mentality, of this type of flow state, that are really listening and taking up space. But listening is listening, and also positivity are, I say, like the most important characteristics,
Ooh, and that's, outside of music and everything, that's just so important for life. So important. And I think one of the things of listening too is that you can kind of always tell, at least in my experiences, I've found that you can identify those who haven't really listened to their own truth, because they have a very hard time listening to others. Because it's always like they're thinking about their own response, or how they should be. And that's one of the more refreshing things of musicians, is that, especially at least improv jazz focused musicians, that they really do communicate really well. in terms of like the different needs. I mean, I've also found some ones that are bad communicators, but don't want to lump them all together. But for the most part, especially on stage, it's this opportunity to really let go for them. And I love how you said that it is a meditation like experience. And I tap into that. Like anytime you can get into the flow, that's meditation, like 101.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know why this is coming up for me, but I'm gonna just say it. I had a therapist once tell me, Brittany, you are an artist. It's the fabric of your being. So everything you do is from the perspective of an artist. So when you're washing your dishes, I want you to think, I'm washing my dishes like an artist. What does that mean? I'm doing my laundry like an artist, as an artist. What does that mean? I'm taking a walk as an artist. What does that mean? And constantly folding that into your understanding of who you are and trusting that. Some of that is another way to practice that meditation, right? Is just trusting that how showing up is it's authentic, it's inherent. You can't help it, right? It's the being in you, it's the soul in you, just working through this physical body right now that wants to connect to something else, to connect to something like itself, or something that stirs its curiosity. And
yeah,
I feel like curiosity has been the thing that has saved me, honestly, saved me from the dark. I feel like when you stop being curious is when your frequency drops. For me.
Ooh, no, I'm just going to say for everybody, I'm just going to put the stamp on that one, seal of approval, because that's the one. I mean, because for myself, the listeners probably know at this point, I heal or facilitate the healing of like a wide spectrum and demographics of people from the 20s to the 90s, and I found that the one thing that we lose touch with that stops us from really questioning if this aligns with our truth, if this resonates, if this is the energy that we want within us, and that aligns with what we're expressing, is once they lose that questioning, they lose that curiosity, they do sink down. Because anytime you think you've made it, you're automatically getting bogged down with just assumptions and expectations. And I call those two words, the root of all suffering. Because your assumptions lead to judgments, your expectations lead to letdowns, and you lose what we had when we were kids, just embracing everything that you get and being enamored with life. And I think that's the one thing that I've found is really painful for the modern day education experiences for most public schools and just schools and society, like big city type of mentality in general, is that we assume everything. We crush curiosity because of that conformity aspect. So just to hear you say it, and I'm just like, yeah, like just the fact that it's like firsthand experience, like that's every person I've come across that's gone through that journey of, having to go down, or as Rusty and I like to call it, the backside of the planet. You're getting that gravitational swing to go on to your next trajectory, your next project, next work. Is you have to go through that level of just kind of getting, like, as you said earlier, getting lost in the forgetfulness. And then you remember again, like, oh yeah, this is important. Well, what else did I forget? What else did I do? So it's a fun dance of just like amnesia, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
Temporary amnesia.
Yes, completely. That your perspective, and I share your perspective of it being fun. You have to be patient with yourself to allow it to become fun, because there is a period when you are in that, really in the low, when you're in the valley of it, and you want to go toward the light again, and you want to be on the other side of the planet, right? Or like whatever side of the planet, the opposite side.
Yeah.
When you're desiring that, instead of this slow death, honestly, you want to grow, you want to expand, you want to develop, you want to have that dreamer in you again, that authentic smile again, to laugh authentically again. I have been there when that's not what's coming up anymore. And
Mm.
but you know it's there, and the patience that it takes with yourself, the gentleness it takes, but the daily rigorous choice that you have to actively make to say, I want it to be fun. I want it to be easy. I want life to be fun. I want life to be easy. I want the journey to be fun. I don't care how long it takes. I want it to be fun. And adapting adopting that mentality. I just think it's so important to always, rein it back into the lower moments, right? Because that's the music that I write, those messages I have come to me on the journey, right? And sometimes I'm in lower places and sometimes I'm in higher places, but I hope that there's always sensitivity to those really low moments of there's no expectation to go from the lowest frequency to the highest frequency within an hour or within a day or with a week. That you have to be realistic with the time space reality that we're in, but just one step in that direction is progress to building that new neural network, that new belief system, that new reality. Yeah. And the setbacks along the way just kind of humble you. Okay, gotta climb that one again. Okay.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Powerful. And it's really fascinating that you to hear the words of someone who's gone through the darker lessons that we have to learn in this journey, and to still maintain the smile. And I think that's just the power that a lot of people think just isn't real when they're in that dark place, that they're like, oh, it's just because it's like it has to do with a lot of different stuff, but that projection of your own suffering in the moment, just being like, oh, they're not real, they're not authentic, that's not true, I can't even imagine that. It takes that self-empowering, like, you have to be your own source of hope, you have to be your own light. And I think it's always been that journey of kind of rediscovering what we've seemingly lost, in the childhood, of learning all these different things and going through the different pains and traumas, where we remember everything that we already were. And I find that journey just keeps unfolding into a more pure expression of ourselves. And it's really cool because, this is one where and we're gonna talk on this in just a second. So it's the week 5. It was Gracious Disco. It was such an upbeat song, but it was just like learning life through these different lessons. Always trying to get back to that flow. And that to me, I was just like, that right there is the magic, because just being able to write something that's still upbeat, happy, yet when you really listen to the lyrics, it's just like, oh, there's some deeper tones to that. Interesting. I'm curious, and just in terms of the listeners, so you guys understand, you've been partaking in this Saturday song assignment for a year. What has been the evolution of yourself throughout this journey of, writing a new song every week, like consciously, building and creating that art?
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind is the fact that before the song assignment, I used to believe that songs were only written when Muse wanted to hit me. And it's like, like Muse would come out and then this is the moment and now I'm writing it and this is the song, right? And it was unpredictable, and it was this relationship that really humbled you to realize like that you are a vessel to be done to, right? And that you were given certain gifts so that this could flow through you. And that was the way that I wrote. So my song, my volume of work was smaller just inherently because I wasn't in a practice of picking up the pen. And that's really what I'm at. That's where I'm now, is trusting. If you really do believe that this is a co-creation with something bigger than yourself, then trusting that when you pick up the pen and paper, something will occur. Something will. And that has been a huge lesson this last year of trusting that. And then definitely going through, there have been phases throughout this journey. There were phases where oh, this song is not as good as the last song, and now it's going to, the whole should, you know, the should factor comes back, where you're like, but it should be just as good as before, and I want it to represent me fully. And then you just have to erase that within a week. Within a week, you might have a mini and you're like, but something goes up Saturday, something's going up on, and you just, because you've committed to, you know. And I'm definitely someone who, I've also, one of the big takeaways for me is that I'm definitely someone who loves, and dare I say needs, accountability in my life. And it's self accountability, of course, like I ultimately choose to do this work, and that is imperative, but accountability of another being, someone else on the end, that's just going to grow with you, or is rooting for you or with you, is participating with you. And that's the beauty of the song assignment is, I started it with Gigi Rogers, who's also a songwriter, who was here in Seattle. We're both from Houston, but we met in Seattle. Crazy. In a coffee shop. Like, you would never believe that. But became really close friends, and love his songwriting, love his voice. And when quarantine and everything shut down, we were talking on the phone, and he's back in Houston now. And we're talking on the phone, and I'm like, you know, it would be so great if we got a way to get over our writer's block during this time. Like, if we have all of this time now, let's use it to make stuff. And then we kind of just started to spitball ideas, and we came up with this idea of, like, I pick a word, Gigi picks a word, and then these two words become an assignment, and then we'll upload it every Saturday. Okay, so it's the Saturday song assignment. Okay, great. So, like, the first month of quarantine, it was just the two of us, and we were putting it on Instagram to, like, have authentic things to post, because, you know, you go through that phase too as an artist, or as someone who is up to things, like an entrepreneur, and where you're in your head like, what do I post that feels authentic and not like, hey, look at me. So this song time became that, and we're writing stuff, and someone reached out to Gigi and was like, I want to be a part of this. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, why not? Why can't that person? So then we just started to transition it as it was asked upon us to make it into a community that anyone could participate. So we've had a lot of people out of the woodwork, never would have expected them to participate. You come to Saturday and it's like opening presents, and you find out who wrote a song that week, and it was inspired by these two random words, and it just keeps that fire in you alive. And you know, there's no comparison. It's just how the words landed in your experience, and how they resonated through you. You have something to share, and that accountability is a big takeaway for me. Is community, anything that brings us together definitely keeps me feeling the purpose to keep going. And yeah,
that's what life's all about, spreading that love and light. And I think that's something that can't really be understated enough, is when you're able to create culture for others to consume in a loving fashion, it transforms into something other than just like instant gratification. You know, it gives them the inspiration to create. It gives them the hope that, oh, I can do this too. Oh, you two just started this? Like, that's awesome that you guys just started this little movement, because I've seen a few other people try it, and like that's really cool for me just to witness again the opportunities when you say yes to life, when you put yourself out there. And I really like what you said in terms of, you know, that this experience is a dance, because it is that expression of allowing the universe to flow through you, but for you to put your twist to it, your own unique shimmer and spark to it. And I think that just, again, comes back to this point of, and the testament of your own kind of self-inquiry and that journey of self-mastery. I always try to stress it. It's the most important journey. And just hearing your story thus far, it sounds really awesome just to know that started from the bottom, now we're here to talk. Like, it's like we go through that dark place and we come back into this point of like really being a powerhouse of creation. So that's awesome. And congratulations on the year with that. That's dedication right there. It's really great to see.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wild. It's wild and humbling. And there's a bit of, Gigi and I only committed to each other to do this for a full year. Life is really picking up in different directions. And so, in this next phase of what comes after the song assignment, I've been toying with the idea of doing the Saturday song assignment, which would be something that I do independent. Everybody's welcome to do it since it is this community, but it's a way to keep me accountable on this journey, to use the momentum of the song assignment. Now we have this volume of work, and that doesn't mean that writing songs has ended completely. It's just taking that volume of work. What's the next step? Okay, now we have to flesh them out. Now we have to rehearse them. Now we have to record them. Now we have to put them out there. And being a musician, independent musician, it is talk about a journey of empowerment. Like, you have to believe in yourself enough to do the research and then do things quote unquote successfully, right? To successfully release a single, to network and find the people to take photos and videos and get images of your work, and and then there's the whole budget aspect, and there's the whole any business venture. It's more than just art, right? It's a business venture, and that has its own very similar, I think it is the same energy, all of what we're talking about, of believing in yourself and showing up and doing work, but it's a different headspace completely, to do more of the administrative, legal part of being a musician, being an artist, and that's mind-blowing.
I mean, I'm just always grateful that we live in a day and age where we have the internet to look things up, because I mean, I couldn't imagine how discouraging this would have been, back in the day when people had to go to libraries and actually physically get out and do these things versus, or hire someone. And I think that's the coolest thing about this opportunity that technology really provides, because I mean, we can have these types of interviews. We were a part of a concert, remotely. And I think that's the coolest stuff to really kind of come back home to, is that we're in this evolving time, and it really is a point for us to manifest the world we want to live in through kind of capitalizing on this. And just in terms of your own, your new single, Autotelic, where was the inspiration for that one? Because for me, I'm looking at that and I just hear, the tones of just being courageous to take that inner look, being, courageous and trusting enough within yourself to empower yourself and see yourself as worthy to be self-empowered. Like, that's one that really hit hard to the heart, I should say. I just have to know, where was the journey and inspiration for that one?
Okay, Autotelic. That actually, we're coming up on a year of that song being in the works, being in the process.
Oh, wow.
So my friend Art Borders, who's a local musician, he plays everything, but he's kind of known for playing keys. At least that's the majority of the time I see him playing them. And so I saw him early on in quarantine, working on collaborations virtually with other musicians around town. So I hit him up and I was like, hey, I would love to collaborate with you. And so he sends me the backing track to what is now Autotelic. And I was going on some really long walks, talking 3 to 8 hour long walks at the beginning of quarantine, because I was in that toxic relationship and we were living together, and I ironically was trying to end it officially, and then quarantine hit, and now we're stuck in this situation and all of the fear at the beginning of quarantine, because no one wants to interact with anyone and we're totally locked down. So the only activity I could do was walk for free. And so I'm taking all of these walks and I'm listening to podcasts and I'm listening to music and trying to just lift my spirit in the sunshine because it's spring in Seattle. And when I'm listening to his backing track, it took me a while actually to find the words to that song. I would say reply to him for maybe like a month. I really took my time with what do I want to say to this really juicy, interesting backing track that he sent me. It has a lot of percussion and keys that have some really interesting changes, really juicy bass line. And I'm like, okay, what do I have to say? What does it mean? And it felt, the music felt like surfacing again. And it also felt heavy to me. And maybe that is the bass line in and of itself, but the percussion has a drive to it that just evoked the message of what is the song. Essentially, that is the song of Autotelic. It's the journey of saying, you know, the first lyrics are, a recluse in my solitude, remote and distant, so you think you know my attitude. It's just privacy to speak, to step out into my boldness. It's
so much more context.
You have to be alone. You have to spend time separated from something that's going to keep lowering you, right? Lowering your frequency, keeping you trapped, and then you talk about the gaslighting and you talk about the stuff that keeps you hooked in that kind of crazy making.
Yeah.
A recluse in my solitude, remote and distant, so you think you know my attitude. It's just privacy that I seek to step out into my boldness. Autotelic, the magnetic eclectic, trying to connect with the world through my message. My music, my message, my musical messages requires courage.
That's what Autotelic is about. Is about when you want to journey back into the light, and you are doing everything you can to just feel that expression of a breath of calm, of peace. And so it's specifically interpersonally about that part of my journey, but it is applicable to anything that I've ever overcome, anything hopefully it, right? Like that.
Yeah. Well, it's like
we
having
do
to have
have
that
to-
courage. I mean, and the trust. I mean, I think for me that really stuck out for me is like, you know, it's to really experience the bliss that you seek, you have to go through this journey of inner looking, and you have to practice your faith and trust building. You have to understand what doesn't resonate with you. And I think that's, again, it comes back to that curiosity point. Like, so many people don't give themselves the space to even wonder that. They're just so used to taking things on from others. And yeah, it had the exclamation mark tears set. So I'm like, Autotelic was dope. Like,
I'll let you go your way if you let me go mine.
I'm going to be paraphrasing. It means something that creates for in and of itself, like if for itself, it can't help but be creative. It can't help but be what it is. It's a purpose in and of itself, of purpose, right? And so, like, what is water, right?
I love it.
But a personality type, and I think artists and any entrepreneurs, anyone has to really who can't help but be creative and create content on a constant basis, because it's just the purpose is in and of itself. It's the extension of who you are, and it's how you bloom, expand, and blossom. That's what that term means, and I think it's applicable to choosing your life again.
That hits a deeper tone. I don't know, life is such a dance of that, you know. To really discover the meaning of life, you have to experience and live it and express yourself. And you don't really get to know who you are until you really go through experiencing the things you recognize clearly aren't you and don't vibe with you. And then it's just this journey of self-creation and manifestation. And that in and of itself, like manifestation, a lot of people don't recognize that you're manifesting and creating everything you attract and want in your life. Like that law of attraction really does play such a huge role, because if you're going to be stuck in that perpetual pity party, you know, and you're going to be ruminating and really focusing on the negatives in life, you're just investing all of your God and goddess energy into it. And that's the stuff that's always been a fascinating journey, just to see others who tap into that recognition where it's like, oh, I have the power to do this. So like this whole journey of self-empowerment that you've been on and are continuing to dance, and we're all just kind of unfolding together in this journey called life. It's really refreshing just to hear someone that's actually consciously creating with these types of energies in mind. Like that's prime A, like real estate right there.
Thank you. It's honestly such an honor to have a space to speak these thoughts out, and not just the containers of songs. I love that. I love that that's, you know, what that medium is, but it is an honor to have space to speak this part of my experience, because, you know, not everyone holds this kind of space unless you are one-on-one and you're friends with them. So, you know.
Well, I mean, I always have to, you know, commend the guests that we have on, because for you guys to open up and everyone in this journey of life to express your vulnerabilities, I think that's what really inspires everyone to break down those barriers of separation and isolation that the ego often tries to manipulate. You know, we grow up in this world learning how to people from the people and experiences around us, and we know so much of life doesn't resonate with our heart, and we get lost in that. And just to hear different creatives express their own journey to this inner love, this inner peace that was always there, you know, that we had to reteach ourselves how to get back to it. That's been so magical to experience.
Yeah.
But this is why it's so natural with creatives, is that you're so already tapped into that effortless expression of now and being in the flow and allowing it to flow through you, that more likely than not, at least, you're going to go through this kind of self-curiosity, this self-inquiry, and this journey of self-mastery and healing. So it's just, you know, I always thank you for your vulnerability and just speaking on everything you have today. And it's been super cool.
Yeah, this has been phenomenal. I'm just, thank you for having me, and thank you for diving. I appreciate it. It's what I feel most comfortable expressing, instead of the shallow, like, yeah, I can't.
I feel that. I feel that. And I just wanted to say again, thank you so much, Brittany, for being on Creatives Chat. We'll have you stick around for an after show. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.